So when it comes to lenses, my ideal situation was to be covered from wide or very wide, and then you want to go into another lens that has a mid-range or normal focal length, and then you want to move up to a telephoto lens that you can do your portraits on, or doing some nice, really natural documentary photography. So let's start with the wide angle. And for the wide angle, I always liked a 15 millimeter lens. I had a Sigma that I kept on one of my camera bodies. And that's another thing. If you're going to be using, let's just say you had three bodies, three lenses, I would keep a wide angle lens, a 15 millimeter, the Sigma, on one of my bodies, on my DX bodies. If you're going to be shooting a full frame FX, then you might want to consider at least a 20 millimeter in that range, because I like to break it up, because you want to make your whole wedding story, or their whole wedding story, you want to give it a lot of impact. So you want to do some images that are going to just be so spectacular, showing the scenery, like if you're like the wedding venue, you're at a beautiful church or outside location, and the same with the reception. You have some beautiful reception areas out there that you can showcase the architecture using your wide angle lens. So you're not going to use it maybe a whole lot, but just enough to get those really beautiful wow photos in there. And the next focal length would be more on the normal side. And I used a 28 to 75 millimeter f2.8 lens. Many other camera manufacturers have a 24 to 70 millimeter f2.8 lens. And as a matter of fact, the 28 to 75 millimeter that I used, as a matter of fact, I'm using it right now as I'm recording this video. The newer ones now have a focusing motor that's built in. So if you're going to be using an entry-level camera where your body doesn't have a focusing motor, your lens now has one. So it's compatible with your entry-level camera. But anyway, the 70, well, in my case, the 28 to 75 is a good range for that normal look. And I do like using zoom lenses, because if I'm in a certain area, as you know by now, wedding photography can move very, very fast. So it's just a matter of just turning your wrist and getting the proper focal length, or as best as you can with the lens that's on your camera body. And next, we're going to be looking at the telephoto range. And this is a lens that's going to really set you apart if you're going to be getting a proper lens, a really high quality lens that's going to give you beautiful blur in the background. My favorite lens for that would be the 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8 lens. That is just an amazing. And again, I can go from 70 to 200 with just a turn of the wrist. I don't have to go up and, back and forth, although you can crop. But not only that, with that lens, but the image quality and the saturation, everything about that lens, both Nikon and Canon and other manufacturers, it's just a beautiful lens with just the right focal length for portraiture and capturing documentary photography. I know it's a pricey lens, but save up for it. If you have to sell one of your cars or guitars, check into it. You'll never be sorry you bought this lens. Possibly another alternative, if you don't have all these lenses and you're doing a major wedding, it may pay you to rent one for the day or 2 or 3 days to get used to it. So those are the three ranges. However, I do have other lenses on a DX camera body crop sensor. I loved using my 18 to 200 millimeter lens on my Nikon. And this is super nice because now this is something to consider if you don't have the funds to get a 15 millimeter lens. You can use this 18 to 200 millimeter lens, although it's not quite as wide as a 15 millimeter. The 18 is going to get you close, and if you have this lens, it's got multi-uses. It's especially good. Usually at the reception, I would have this lens on one of my camera bodies, and because it just has so much versatility to it, going from that wide to extremely high focal length of 200 millimeter. Another lens that I used occasionally, which is really interesting, is a fisheye pilling 8 millimeter. I use that on my crop sensor Nikon. It can give you some really dramatic, interesting images with that focal length range.